Tutankhamun, the boy who became king. A child placed on a throne too heavy for his small shoulders, a ruler destined to be forgotten, yet remembered more than any pharaoh who ever lived. His story is not one of conquest or greatness in life. His armies never marched across foreign lands. His monuments were not vast, and his policies were not his own. His reign was short, frail, and manipulated by others. And yet, by the hand of fate, his tomb, small and hidden, preserved the greatest treasures of ancient Egypt. While greater kings were robbed, their glory stripped away by thieves and time, Tutankhamun slept untouched in darkness for over 3,000 years. When he was found, he became a legend. He was not the greatest ruler of Egypt, but he became its most enduring symbol. To understand Tutankhamun, you must understand the chaos of his birth. His father was Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh. Akhenaten had broken Egypt's faith in a single radical act. For centuries, Egypt had thrived under a pantheon of gods. Amun, Osiris, Isis, Horus, and dozens more. Temples stood in their honor. Priests held immense wealth and power, second only to the pharaoh himself. But Akhenaten rejected all of this. He elevated one god, Aten, the shining disk of the sun, above all others. He closed the temples of Amun, erased his name from monuments, and abandoned Thebes, Egypt's great capital. He built a new city, Akhetaten, a place of glaring sun and open temples where only Aten was worshipped. This was not just a religious change, it was a revolution that cut at the roots of Egyptian life. The people despised it. The priests lost their fortunes, the temples fell silent, the gods of their ancestors were cast aside. Egypt was divided and weakened. When Akhenaten died, his radical experiment collapsed almost overnight. The throne passed briefly through other hands, perhaps to a mysterious figure named Smenkhkare, perhaps to Nefertiti herself. But soon it rested on a boy, the child king Tutankhaten, only 9 years old. At that age he could not rule. He was a puppet, a living symbol placed on the throne so that others could guide Egypt back from the brink. His name tied him to his father's failed god, Aten. That would not do. Under pressure from priests and advisors, his name was changed. He became Tutankhamun, the living image of Amun, the god who had been cast down and now rose again. This was no small act. It was the restoration of Egypt itself. Temples were reopened, festivals revived, statues of Amun stood tall once more. The boy king's name was carved into stone, declaring to all that Egypt was healed, that the heresy was over, and that the gods had returned. But what of the boy himself? Behind the golden mask of propaganda was a child born from centuries of royal incest. The 18th dynasty had preserved its divine bloodline by marrying within the family, brother to sister, father to daughter, generation after generation, until the line was riddled with weakness. Tutankhamun was the son of Akhenaten and his own sister. His wife Ankhesenamun was also his half-sister. Their union produced no heirs, only 2 stillborn daughters, whose tiny bodies were embalmed and buried with him. The boy king's body betrayed him. Modern science has revealed the truth his statues tried to conceal. Tutankhamun was not the strong athletic ruler shown in carvings. He had a cleft palate. His spine was twisted. He suffered from scoliosis. His hips were malformed. He had a club foot that forced him to limp, and dozens of canes were buried with him, their tips worn down from daily use. He carried the parasite of malaria, one of the earliest confirmed cases in history. His bones were brittle, his frame fragile. He was not a conqueror, not a warrior, but a boy struggling simply to live. Despite this, he wore the crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. He sat on the throne, performed rituals, and appeared in scenes of power. In reliefs he is shown riding chariots, hunting lions, striking down enemies. These images were lies, symbols of kingship. The truth is that Tutankhamun could barely walk without a cane. His reign was guided by the hands of others. I, the aged courtier who had served under his father, and Horemheb, the military general. These men wielded the true power. They rebuilt temples, restored priests, and erased Akhenaten's heresy. The boy king's name was attached to decrees, but his will was not his own. He was a vessel through which Egypt recovered. And then, before manhood, his story ended. Tutankhamun died around 18 or 19 years old. The cause remains one of history's great mysteries. For decades, theories swirled. Some said he was murdered, struck in the head by rivals eager for power. A hole in his skull seemed to support this, until later studies showed it was a mistake of embalming. Others claimed he died in a chariot crash, thrown violently to the ground, but his club foot makes that unlikely. Science has revealed a more grim truth. He suffered a fracture in his left leg, perhaps from a simple fall. That wound became infected. Combined with malaria and his weakened immune system, it may have killed him. The boy who was king did not die in battle, did not die in glory, but in weakness, his body failing him one final time. His death was sudden, and his burial showed it. Unlike the grand tombs of other pharaohs in the Valley of the Kings, Tutankhamun's was small, cramped, and unfinished. It may have been intended for someone else, hurriedly repurposed when the boy king died. The walls were plastered and painted quickly, the scenes rough and clumsy. The paint had not even dried when the tomb was sealed, leaving strange microbial stains that still scar the walls. Worse, his body was mishandled. Studies revealed that after burial his remains were burned. The embalming process had been rushed and flawed. Oils used in the process reacted with oxygen and ignited, scorching his body within the coffin. The eternal pharaoh was reduced to a blackened shell, fragile and broken. And yet within this imperfect tomb, treasures beyond imagining lay hidden. In 1922, Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon uncovered it. Unlike the great tombs looted long ago, Tutankhamun's was almost intact. The chambers overflowed with riches, golden shrines, alabaster vessels, statues of gods, weapons, furniture, jewelry, and chariots. At the center, nested shrines enclosed his sarcophagus. Within it lay 3 coffins, the innermost of solid gold. And on his face, the mask that became the icon of ancient Egypt, a masterpiece of gold and lapis, serene and eternal. The discovery shook the world. Crowds gathered at newspapers to read of it. Museums displayed his treasures to millions. The legend of the pharaoh's curse was born when Carnarvon died, shortly after the tomb's opening, fueling wild stories of ancient vengeance. In truth, there was no curse. The only power Tutankhamun had was the power of awe. He became the most famous pharaoh, his mask the face of Egypt itself. But behind the gold lies the darker truth. Tutankhamun's life was one of suffering, born from incest, twisted by disease, limping through life on canes, plagued with pain. A child king manipulated by advisors, married to his sister, burying his own daughters. His reign accomplished little. His name was erased by successors who considered him insignificant. His body was burned in his coffin. His tomb was small and rushed, an afterthought. In life, he was weak, forgotten, discarded. And yet in death he triumphed. By chance, by the silence of a hidden tomb, he became greater than any conqueror. Ramses the Great built vast monuments, but his tomb was robbed. Hatshepsut ruled as king, but her memory was erased. Thutmose marched to war, but his treasures were lost. Tutankhamun, the boy who limped, the boy who suffered, kept his secrets safe. And when the modern world uncovered him, he became eternal. His story is the story of fragility and chance. He was a boy who should have been forgotten, but who became the most remembered. He was a weak king, but a strong symbol. He lived in pain, but his mask shows eternal peace. In his gold, we see not the boy, but the dream of eternity that Egypt carried. The boy who was king, the king who was erased, the erased who became immortal. But history has even more fascinating leaders waiting in the shadows. Stick around and subscribe. Let's explore their worlds together. History isn't just old stories. It's an epic adventure full of power, ambition, and incredible tales. Thank you for watching.